Are you looking to get started with raising meat rabbits and you're wondering, what do you need to get started with? What equipment do you need? What supplies do you need? I'm going to cover all that in today's video, so stick around. Hey guys, welcome back to another Slightly Rednecked video. Again, my name is Chris. If you're not familiar with this channel, I help you to produce your own meat, eggs, and vegetables from your backyard, your balcony, your deck, your garage, or heck, even a spare room in your house if that's the way you want to do it. In today's video, I'm going to cover the basics of getting started with raising your own meat rabbits. If you have nothing at all, what do you need to get in place before you purchase your first rabbit? So let's jump right into it. You can see my rabbitry set up here behind me. You don't need to go this elaborate, but the very first thing that you do need to do is to set up a cage or multiple cages. If you're going to be breeding meat rabbits, you're going to need at least 2, probably 3 cages. And it really depends on, how many rabbits you want to breed. I think a good starting set is probably 1 buck and 2 does. And I would suggest starting with 4 cages. That gives you 1 cage for your buck, 2 cages for your does, and then 1 extra cage, which is way over here almost off camera, for any kind of grow outs. Anytime you need to move a rabbit around or anything like that, you'll have 1 empty cage that you can do that. Throw your babies in for the last couple of weeks while they grow out, those kinds of things. So 4 cages is a good way to start. Now, whether you buy your cages or build your cages, totally up to you. I do have a video on how to build a wire rabbit cage, just like the ones that you see right here. I personally prefer all wire rabbit cages, much cleaner than anything with a solid floor. Meat rabbits are well adapted to wire cages, to living in wire cages, and you really don't want to go with anything that is wood. You don't want to go with anything that has a wooden floor for a couple of reasons. First of all, the rabbits will chew on just about anything, so they're going to chew up any kind of wood that you put anywhere near their cage. Secondly, wood absorbs everything. So specifically, it absorbs urine. It's almost impossible to keep clean. And in my opinion, rabbits are much healthier the cleaner that you can keep them. And if you keep them in cages that have wood floors, you're going to be cleaning that out every day, every other day. Now, even if you want to keep these rabbits inside, you can still do wire cages with a stacking system. You can have some kind of rack that holds the cages up, 1 cage above another, and take up a very small footprint. In that case, you'll need some kind of dropping pan that goes underneath the cage to catch that. And you'll also need some kind of urine guard that goes up probably about 4 inches on the cage, all the way around the cage, because rabbits will urinate outside of their cage. So even if you have pans underneath, they're going to urinate over the edge of that pan. And that could be something as simple as like a piece of sheet metal or something that you cut to size and just staple on there that directs any urine that goes down into the pan underneath the cage. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. I'm not going to get into a lot of discussion about that right now because you can look up several examples and see how that's all done. But just know that if you plan on keeping these guys inside, you will notice that I've got a tarp underneath here that catches all my droppings and all that kind of stuff, and I've got it real high up on the sides. That's because sometimes the rabbits will urinate out the sides. That catches it all and directs it down into the bottom. It doesn't make a mess everywhere else. All right, so let's move on to the second thing. If you are going to have wire cages, and always get your cages in place before you ever think about purchasing a rabbit. Nothing worse than coming home with a rabbit and not having a cage to put it in. You're going to end up in a world of hurt. Even if, you can't just keep a rabbit in a box. Like I said, they're going to make a mess of that pretty quick, and you're going to have to clean it out every day, probably multiple times a day in order to keep them clean and healthy. You need to have cages set up before you ever purchase your first rabbit. Now, let me back up just a little bit here. Okay, I've got a nice little shed built up here with a nice roof on the top. This was about a $250 shed to build, and it's just a simple structure, and I've got tarp walls on the side here, which you can't really see, but the sides are just tarped in to provide a wind block for the rabbits. You can do something elaborate like that, or, well, I don't know that it's elaborate, but you could do something big like that, or you can do a very small, just anything that will hold the cages up and provide them with some kind of wind block. That could be plywood on the sides. I've just got tarps on the walls that just keeps the wind off of them, but you need to give them some kind of wind block to keep the wind off of them. You can do that multiple different ways, however you want to do that. Like I said, look it up on Pinterest or whatever. You'll come up with 100 different ideas for it. But you need to have some kind of cage in place before you go any further, that should be your first priority. I do find that if you are planning on having more than about 2 cages, you're probably economically better off building them than you are buying them. Now, if you plan on only having 1 or 2 cages, then it tends to be cheaper to buy the cages than it is to build the cages. Okay, if you are using wire cages like I am, you do need to have some kind of resting mat in there. This is a hard plastic resting mat that I've been using, and it's got these little clips on the sides that clip into the bottom of the cage. There are many different types of resting mats you could get. They make them out of grass, like woven grass, so the rabbits can chew on them. You'll have to replace those every once in a while, but they last a surprisingly long time, and they're pretty economical. They work out pretty well. You could use something like just a tile or even a piece of wood. Now, I would stay away from plywood because it's got glue in it, and the rabbits are going to chew on that, and you don't really want them chewing and ingesting that glue and those kinds of things. But if you had a slab of wood, you could put that in there. Just something small like this that give them something to get off the wire. My rabbits don't use it all that often, but they do use it a little bit from time to time. I'll leave a link down below where you can look at a couple of different types of resting mats that you can purchase for your cages. Just a word too, any links I leave below will probably be affiliate links. I'll probably earn $1 or $2 if you purchase through those links. If you don't like that, go look it up on your own and purchase it. If you do purchase through those links, thank you very much for supporting me in my videos. All right, let me get this put back away. Max, get out of there. Come on, buddy. Get out. All right, let's move on to feeding and watering. Those are the 2 next essential things. You need some kind of feeder for the rabbits. Now, I do find that these J-style feeders that sit on the outside of the cage, there's a hole cut in the cage that they go through the inside. You just lift the lid up, dump your food in, and it all goes down to the bottom where the rabbits can get to it. These are pretty common. You've probably seen these before. I'll leave a link where you can see them a little bit more in detail, but these work fantastic. You don't have to open the cage to get in and feed it. And if you didn't tend to feed in just a bowl, like if you just put a bowl inside the cage and feed, most rabbits will dig in that and they'll throw their food all out of that. So you don't really want to go with a bowl. You want to go with something else that's a little bit better. This works really, really well. Rabbits do need hay as well, so you'll need some kind of hay feeder, because if you just take a handful of hay and throw it in the cage, it's going to get all scattered around, fall through the cage, and get wasted, most of it. I find that what I use is just cage wire, and I clip it onto the sides. I've got a video on how I made these. I'll look it up, and I'll put a link up here so you can click on that and see how the hay feeders are made. But I just set them right above the feeder themselves. This one actually has hay in it right now. I need to fill the others up. And this just, the rabbit just comes up, and they pull hay through the inside of the cage, through it. And any excess falls down into their feeder and they'll eat that later. So those work pretty well for me as well. As far as watering goes, you can do that a number of different ways. You can just water in like a crock. Let me get a bowl out here. You can use a crock like this and just bring water out for your rabbits. That works pretty well. And in fact, if you live in an area where it freezes in the wintertime, you need to have some of these on hand for wintertime watering, if not, all the time. Rubber crocks work really well too, because when they freeze, you can kind of pop the ice out of them like an ice cube tray. But these have worked well for me, these ceramic waterers. I'll leave a link down below where you can pick those up as well. Okay, other options for watering that I prefer is I use an automatic water system. You might be able to see the tubing set up right here that has nipples that feed into each cage, and it's all fed off of a bucket in the back. It's a 5-gallon bucket that you just fill with water, and it's a gravity feed system that keeps water to all of these cages. And I just fill the bucket up about once a week. Probably it doesn't even go out that fast. So I just fill it up periodically. And all my rabbits have water all the time. I'll leave, I do have a video on how to set this up as well. I'll leave a link right here, I think, for that video, so you can see how I set up my automatic watering system. There is this option as well. You can go with water bottles. I would suggest that if you go with water bottles, this is the style I would go with. And let me get this up a little bit closer. This is a little bit different than probably what you're used to seeing. Most water bottles, the rabbits lick them, and that's where the water comes out, and they're a sealed system, so you have to take it off the cage, open it up, and fill it up with water, and then put it back on the cage. I like these a lot. They have a valve, like a nipple system, very similar to the automatic watering system. The rabbits bite on that valve, and that's what lets water out. The nice thing about these is that the top just pops right open. So when this is on the cage, you don't have to take it off the cage. Let me turn that around. It'll be mounted on the cage like so, and all you gotta do is pop the top open and fill it up with water and then close it back up. You don't have to take it off the cage to fill it. So these are very, very nice if you plan on using water bottles. I'll leave a link down below where you can pick those up as well. And just for comparisons, you can see that this is the valve for the automatic watering system. The tube just hooks in right there. It's got a little spring that hooks on this side, and it hooks onto the side of the cage itself. And again, they just bite that valve, and that's what lets the water out of it. I will say, if you purchase these, I'll leave a link down below where you can get them. They come in a set where you get, you get like, here, let me get these situated here. You get the little spring that you hook onto here, and that's what holds it onto the cage itself. You also will receive a lot of these little tees that are nice, because that's what feeds off of, that's the section right here. I've got the main hose going here with the tee that goes down to the cage to provide water to it. So you get a lot of these as well. And it's a pretty nice little kit. This is a 20-piece kit, and I would suggest purchasing like a 20-piece kit, 20 pieces of them, because even though I've only got 4 cages, these little water valves, especially over the course of time, if you've got hard water like I do, they tend to start leaking after a little while. Usually I'll get about 3 or 4 months of use out of one, and these are pretty cheap, so it's not that big a deal, but I like to have extras on hand, because when they start to leak and start to drip a little bit, I can just take one off, slap another one on, and I'm good to go for another couple of months. So these are great to have on hand. All right, other things that you will need, and this is not necessarily a must-have, but this is a very nice to have, is a pet carrier, just a standard pet carrier. These are great to have on hand if you need to transport a rabbit anywhere when you're going to get your rabbits and bringing them home. If you need to move a rabbit from one cage to another, or you just need to put them in here for a period of time while you do some cage cleaning, these are really, really nice to have. So I would pick up 1 or 2 of these as well. All right, so if you are going to be breeding meat rabbits, which is the whole point of getting into meat rabbits, is to breed them, right? You're going to need a nest box of some kind. Let me get my nest box here. You can build those. They do have these for sale, but I would actually suggest building your own. It's pretty easy. It's just a wire box, and I just line it with cardboard right before I have right before it's going to be used, and stuff it with straw. That is my nest box. And I've got a link on a video up here where you can learn how I made this nest box right here, or one very similar to it. I don't know that it was this exact one, but these work great, and no need to necessarily buy one. You can buy a nest box if you would rather have it. What I would suggest is try to get one. You're going to have a hard time finding them, but try to get one that does not have a closure on the top, and if it does, only a partial enclosure, not closed all the way over, because the big enemy is moisture in a nest. You don't want your rabbits to be wet and damp, and if you have it closed off where it doesn't have ventilation and it can't air out, there's going to be moisture in there, there's going to be dampness, and that's going to lead to problems. Ventilation is the key. It gets pretty cold here. I breed rabbits all winter long, and I have never lost a litter due to the freezing cold temperatures, because the mother is going to line that nest with plenty of fur. She does a great job of insulating the nest and keeping her babies warm. So I would go with an open top nest box myself. And one more thing you're going to want to consider is your rabbits need some kind of toys. They do like to chew, and they need to chew because their teeth never stop growing, so they need to chew on something to keep their teeth kind of worn down. But that can be really as simple as just sticks you find. Look it up, whatever kind of stick it is. Look it up on is it safe for rabbits before you give it to them. But untreated wood, untreated 2x4s work great. Just throw it in their cage. This used to be a solid 2x4, and you can see he's just chewed it down and gnawed it all around. And then I just throw a new one in there whenever it gets down to really nothing. Just something for them to chew on is all they need. They don't need anything special, anything specifically made for rabbit toys, anything like that. Just a stick, a piece of wood, anything like that. Just look it up, make sure it's non-toxic, make sure it's not treated. You don't want to throw pressure treated wood in there for them, but anything else should be just fine. All right, I think that pretty much covers the basic equipment you're going to need for your rabbits. Leave me a comment below. Let me know if you have a question, if you have something else you're wondering about. One thing I will say is I have tons of videos on rabbits in general, so look back through my channel if you have questions. I've got videos on how to breed them, on pretty much every topic that you're going to want to know about meat rabbits. So look back through those videos, follow my channel, keep up to date with my updates, and if you have questions or you have things that you want to see addressed in a future video, let me know. I will do my best to answer those for you. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, God bless.